Welcome to Flip Lesson 36 for the 5th grade. Today we're going to look at triangles and understand the different ways that we can name triangles. Hopefully this is a little bit of review, but we're going to take this and really explain all these different ideas. As we look at triangles, you see 3 different triangles, an orange, yellow, and purple triangle up there. And the first way that we want to name our triangles is by looking at the angles on the inside. All right, as we start with our orange triangle, we have probably the easiest triangle to identify because of that right angle that's sitting in that corner, the symbol right there to let us know that it's a right angle. And because of that, we call it a right triangle, all right, which means that it has one 90-degree angle. All right. So it has one 90-degree angle. Because it has that one 90-degree angle, it's going to be a right triangle. As we move over to our yellow triangle, as we look at the angles, we think about our relationship for angles and how angles work. And there are 2 other different types of angles. We have obtuse angles and we have acute angles. Right? Now every triangle has acute angles. It has to. It's just the way it works. Right? If we go back and look at our right triangle, we have our right angle and then we have an acute angle here and an acute angle here. But some triangles will have 3 acute angles. And so if you have 3 acute angles, you're going to have what's known as an acute triangle. And so that's our second type of triangle. So we got right triangle, we got acute triangle, and that leaves the last one. By looking at angles, we must have to do with our last type of angle, which would be obtuse, which means that the last type of triangle is an obtuse triangle because it has one obtuse angle. All right, one obtuse angle. And so by looking at the angles of a triangle, we can understand how that works. If we move down, we can get a second set of triangles. And these triangles we're going to name by looking not at their angles, but instead at their sides and understanding the relationship of their sides. And as we look at the sides, we want to look at the length of their sides. If we start here in the middle by looking at this greenish, bluish green color, we have this side, and this side. And all 3 of these sides are equal. And when all 3 sides, so if it has 3 equal sides, we're going to have the equilateral triangle. Equilateral. And so we have our first type of triangle, naming them according to side. I think I spelled that wrong. I'm going to be honest. I got to double check it, but not right now. All right, so if we have 3 equal sides, we have equilateral triangle. If we move to the right, looking at this triangle, our red triangle, now we have 2 equal sides. So if we have 2 equal sides, now we have our second type of triangle by size, which is the isosceles triangle. So we have our second type, which means that the third type of triangle is going to have 0 equal sides. Looking at here, there's 0, and that's going to make it a scalene triangle. And so we have our different names. Now, working with these 6 names, we can really start to apply these ideas because one is looking at sides, the other is looking at angles. technically every triangle can be named two ways, once by its sides, once by its angles. So let's try and do that. We want to make an isosceles triangle, and we also want it to be an acute triangle. All right. And so if we're going to have isosceles triangle, we're going to have two sides that are the exact same length. All right. And let's make sure I have a corner there. All right. And right here is an acute angle, and now we got to make sure that this angle and this angle are also acute. And if I put a line like that, it's very clear to see that this is an isosceles triangle. This side and this side are the same, and we have acute angles all the way across. And so we have an isosceles acute triangle. Here, second example, we have obtuse scalene triangle. Right? So obtuse, we need an obtuse angle. So I'm going to start like that. And scalene tells us that we need three sides that are not equal length. All right. So I have two different lengths here, and if I join these two sides together, all right, freehand drawing is not really the best idea. I should get a ruler. That would make things look much, much nicer, right? But if you understand the freehand drawing, you can see all three sides are different lengths, so it's obtuse and scalene. All right, I'm going to give you a challenge down at the bottom. Can you draw a right equilateral triangle? See how you do. That is lesson 36, all about triangles.